It's good morning, as I said, good afternoon, wherever you're calling from across this great continent of ours. My name's Chris Wood. I'm an account manager here at Huntress. Just to make sure you're in the right place at the right time. Today we're going to be sort of focusing on the Huntress Managed SIEM service, as you can see there, next level threat hunting with Huntress Managed SIEM with myself and Sasha. I'll introduce Sasha in a sec. For those of you who aren't actually aware, SIEM has been going for around 12 months now, including the beta at Huntress. And so we wanted to put this webinar together for our partners across Europe, really to give you a bit of an insight into the service, because well aware it is a new technology, not just for ourselves, but for our partners and the clients that you serve as well. So we wanted to give you a bit of an insight into the history of why we put SIEM together, where it's sort of come from, and what we're doing, and how our partners are utilizing it. And I'm delighted to be introducing to you well-known personality within Huntress, Sasha Roshan, who's going to sort of give you an insight of what we're going to be doing today and take you through SIEM. So Sasha, I'll hand over to yourself.
Yep, really appreciate it, Chris. So just a little introduction on myself. I am Sasha. I'm one of the sales engineers attached to the EMEA region. So I get the best of both worlds. I get to be a bit technical and a bit salesy as well. So no, really glad to be here. And just some kind of housekeeping moments that I want to just quickly mention. There is a Q&A section. So if you've got any questions, please plug that in. We'll be more than happy to get those answered. And there's also a resource tab at the bottom as well. That's going to include, let's just double check, the SIEM data sheets and a SIEM buyer's guide as well. So definitely get those downloaded and have a peek at that as well. But do we have an agenda for you today? Okay, so in today's session, about 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about really the pains of the SIEM solutions out there in today's market. You know, what we're seeing people suffer from with SIEM solutions, why it's mainly focused for the enterprise space, and how we've switched that around. And then, of course, you know, the benefits of utilizing the SIEM with Huntress. So, you know, we'll go through the kind of perks of utilizing the SIEM solution with Huntress, what sort of benefits if you're combining that with EDR, for example, which I know most of the people in today's call do have EDR. So I'll definitely talk about the benefits of that. And my favorite, which is number 3, war stories, the successful things that the SOC team have done utilizing this SIEM solution in order to be able to wreck hackers and keep our partners safe. And then I wouldn't be stepping here if I wasn't going to do a demo. So I always make sure I'm going to do a demonstration. I said, Chris, I need to do a demo if I'm going to be on here. So yes, we'll go through a demonstration on my demo platform and be able to show you what that looks like and how easy it is to configure SIEM. And then we'll pass it over to Chris to talk about selling SIEM and how to be able to move forward with SIEM after this conversation. Okay, so really excited you're here. Now, if we just take a step back and we talk about cybersecurity as a whole, I think we all agree every minute matters with cybersecurity, okay? If there's a breach, for example, if there's ransomware, if there's a brute force attack, for example, whatever it is, minutes do matter. The difference between 1 to 2 minutes can make a difference of a breach. We shouldn't be waiting hours. We should be focusing as soon as possible, what can we be able to find at that moment, at that time? So as you can see, SIEM helps you respond earlier in the attack chain. Why? Because when we talk about EDR, that's focusing on the endpoints. When we talk about ITDR, that's focusing on the identities. But also, there may be something that's happening on the network that we don't have visibility of. The SIEM solution, that stands for Security Information and Event Management, that is going to unlock the visibility for the SOC team, for yourselves, for my team, to be able to see, is there anything actually happening on the network before it ends up touching the endpoint or so forth, for example. Having that visibility unlocked will be able to reduce the risk. Okay, and that's one of the things that we're trying to effectively promote with our SIEM solution. But if we talk about the current situation with organizations utilizing SIEM, you know, 5 years ago, the SIEM solution was untouchable, okay? And then it started becoming a little bit more noticeable, etc., for the SMB market. There was begging, hey, we need a SIEM solution, but, you know, the Microsoft Sentinels, the Splunks out there, they were just too expensive. So a year ago, Huntress was like, okay, we need to start solving for this, you know, because the SIEM really natively was built for the top 1% rather than the 99% out there. And these are the pains that we've seen, the garbage in, garbage out. The amount of data that these enterprise SIEM solutions are ingesting is just too much for us to be able to handle effectively. I mean, if you're storing and ingesting absolutely everything, half of the stuff, maybe more than half, is not going to be security related. And enterprise grade technologies, they charge you per GB. They don't charge you per, effectively data source, right? So they charge you for ingestion, they charge you for storage, and they charge you for exploitation as well. And that is effectively the more stuff that you bring in, the harder it is for that SOC team to kind of swim through all of that noise to try and find the one or two things that actually do make a difference with that incident. So, as you can be able to see, it does lead to overwhelming. You're paying through the nose. Of course, SIEM solutions are built for the enterprise space. It's built for those organizations that effectively have an unlimited budget. Okay. But what about the SMB market? What about the 99%? Not everyone has that budget, especially for very small organizations. So that's a pain that we saw as well. Tuning, quieting the noise, with SIEM solutions out there, they don't give you the ability to be able to tune what you want to filter out. So effectively, you're again having to store absolutely everything. And most of the things are unnecessary, which then harms the compliance aspect as well. Because you're retaining effectively everything, you're not really going ahead and being able to distinguish the differences between the security logs and the differences between just generic logs. Okay. And those are the sort of pains that we see. There are many SIEM solutions out there, which effectively are going to be focusing on that enterprise space, but there's not many SIEM solutions out there that focuses on the SMB market, focuses on the MSP. Okay. So the brutal truth is SIEM is out of the reach for most organizations out there. So we didn't like it. Huntress was like, hold my beer. We'll take a step in. We'll do what we do best and we'll make it affordable. We'll make it sustainable. We'll make it really, really good for the MSP and the SMB market. So enter the Huntress SIEM solution, and then this is what we get right now. So this is the workflow. This is one of my favorite slides of the SIEM. This is from start to finish of what happens. Okay, so we can be able to ingest logs, and we're talking about things like your Windows event logs, your networking logs, your identity and authentication, soon to be cloud logs as well. And all of those things get ingested into the SIEM solution, but not everything is stored. And that's an important aspect to be able to mention, because other SIEM solutions, they want to store everything and they will charge you for that storage. But Huntress, we don't need to know if you're traveling to www.youtube.com. We don't need to know some information that's relevant to some Windows event logs. Okay, those are not security related, but some of them are. So we have a predefined list, which is part of our Huntress smart filtering technology, that effectively will go ahead and filter out the noise, the things which are not security related, and only hold and store the information that is security related. Why is that important? Because that means our SOC team have the right information from the very start to be able to find what's needed and what's related to security, rather than having to make the decision to know, is that security related, is that not? Because that's going to reduce or that's going to effectively harm our mean time to respond and how effective we are to respond if we don't have the right information from the very start. So that's why the smart filtering technology is a game changer for us. Now, of course, it's a managed solution. Everything at Huntress is managed. It comes with that 24/7 SOC team. I always say in 2025, it's not hard to find good technology, but it is hard to find good people behind the technology. I mention that all the time because I'm a firm believer that our SOC team is the best in the market. Okay, I'm not just saying that because I work here. I'm saying that because I've worked with multiple SOC teams out there in the industry, and the level of in depthness that we go when we're dealing with incidents, etc. We don't kind of just stop here. Okay, guys, we can't do anything else. We actually try go above and beyond where we can, and that's why the investigation and the threat hunting really does take a step forward. Now, all the data that's going through that will be subject to investigation. There's going to be detections that we have. There are going to be things that require threat hunting as well. So for my lovely partners that are utilizing EDR, if there's something that's been detected on an EDR level, we can also check out the SIEM logs to see if there's any lateral movement that's maybe gone through the network. Maybe there's some VPN logs that we need to go through, firewall logs, for example, or even just the Windows event logs. We can actually go through that as well, just starting from the EDR. So that's the threat hunting that we do, and vice versa. Maybe we check the actual EDR logs if we see something that's pointing towards a machine from the SIEM. Now, as I mentioned, the power of having multiple solutions under the same SOC team allows the capability of enhanced threat hunting, which is what you're seeing over here. Okay. Now, what happens when we actually detect something? We can respond. Yes, we can be able to respond. We'll provide you a instant report letting you know what we've actually detected, what needs to be done. We'll go ahead and if needed, if we actually see an EDR that's attached to that account as well, we can actually go ahead and isolate the machine if needed. If we see something that's pointing to that particular machine. And I've got a war story to go through that as well, because I've actually been involved with that particular situation. So you can see that we do indeed generate instant reports that are going to go direct to the partners, so your admins such as yourselves. We're going to give you next steps. You could be able to reach out to us via live chat, email, SOC callback as well, if there's any further steps that you may need help with. And with that, we also are able to store data by default for 1 year, or you can extend it to 7 years as well. Okay, and that's going to help from a compliance. The way we store data, how we store data, how we transfer data, for example, that's going to help from a compliance aspect. And with things like NIS2, I saw a lot of Netherlands out there. Okay, so Italy, Germany, NIS2 is massive right now within Huntress. Like we're seeing a lot of requests for that. And one of the requests is that they need to be able to prove that they're storing data. And something that's going to help prove that is something such as a SIEM solution. And to have a 24/7 team monitoring that, responding to that as well, is just going to put you in a better position from a compliance aspect too. All right. So if there's any questions, please put them into the chat. Be more than happy to get those answered. Now, probably one of the most important slides is, hey, Sasha, what can you ingest? I mean, it's all great that you've got all these fancy technologies, but what can you actually ingest? And these are the data sources that we can currently ingest right now. Okay, so you can see there's a wide variety of firewalls, and we'll go through that on the dashboard. You can see identity and credentials as well. I'm just going to mention, don't be alarmed if you don't see a firewall vendor there, for example, you don't see a general vendor there, because there is the capability to be able to actually pull general collections via syslog, as long as they follow the formats of CEF and Leaf, then we still technically can be able to ingest it under a generic syslog. But we just need you to let us know, so we could be able to maybe tweak something from our side or your side, for example. But we are making some progress. I do want to say that we are able to also ingest Sentinel-1 logs as well. So for our partners that don't utilize Defender, maybe utilize Sentinel-1 as well. This is kind of like a testing beta right now, the Sentinel-1. So we can be able to ingest that data. It's going to be the activity log. So if there's anyone that's interested in order to test that, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to get that enabled for you. And then coming soon, we have AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So Azure is currently in testing. A lot of people are asking me, hey, Sasha, when's Azure going to be GA? We're hoping for that to be Q3 at the moment with the combination of AWS, and I believe Google is going to be destined for Q4. But yes, this has been something that we've been desperate to get out, because a lot of our partners are asking for Azure. So we can currently put you as a tester, a beta tester. So if there's anyone that is interested, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to get that done. How to reach out? You can reach out to your account executive, your SC, your account manager as well. You can reach out to Chris and I directly on LinkedIn as well if you need to. So if anyone who's interested to be able to get those features enabled, yeah, please definitely let us know. We'll be happy to get those done for you. Curious to know, and you can put this into the Q&A as well, if there's any vendors that you would like to ingest that's not currently on this list, because there are things on our feedback page that we can be able to at least mention. But if there's anything outside of that, please let us know, because we would love to be able to provide feedback to the product team. Now, let me take a pause over here. Let me see if there are any questions on the chat, Chris, or we got them all answered.
We've had a couple come in which we've managed to answer. First one being, can we provide GDPR compliance documents, which we can do from the KB. We'll make sure to provide those. Also, is there 1 year storage for ITDR and EDR? I'll let you kind of cover that off, Martin. Sasha, I've covered it there. That's come from Martin.
No, that's fine. So Martin, for ITDR, yes, by default, if you get the ITDR subscription, if you get the ITDR trial, whatever it is, we actually store the logs within the SIEM solution for 1 year for you, free of charge. It's not a billable data source. Now, for EDR, it's currently on the roadmap to get EDR onto the SIEM solution. We actually store investigations for 180 days and we store incidents indefinitely, just having the EDR. But things like process insights and logs collected, etc., those will, I believe it's Q3 that we're trying to aim to get that within the SIEM solution. But don't forget, you do have Windows event logs as part of the SIEM solution. Okay, so that could be, for example, authentication logs, errors, password resets, etc. All of that will already be stored within the SIEM solution for you. But anything specifically on the EDR, yeah, we're trying to get that function within the SIEM solution as of now. A great question. And while Chris is doing his part, I'm actually going to go and double check on my side to see where we are with that, because we have made some internal changes. So I'll double check for you. But great question. Okay, we've got no more questions, and I'm going to go into war stories. So war stories is definitely my favorite because these are things I've actually got involved with as well. And this is the one I did get involved with. So I actually love this scenario. Now, when we talk about war stories, these are true war stories from the SOC team. This is not things that we've made up. These are actual things that the SOC team have got involved with, the success of the SOC team. So you can see that we hunted down a VPN brute force attack. So I'm going to do one better for you, gents and ladies. I'm actually going to talk about a real scenario that I got involved with. Okay, so it's the exact same scenario over here, but I'm going to talk about my story. Now, a couple of months ago, I got pulled in by one of the SOC analysts saying, "Hey, Sasha, one of your prospects that's trialing SIEM currently has got a situation right now. It's a critical situation where we saw, again, a brute force attack that was going from a VPN through the firewall directly to a server." What did we do? We actually saw there was multiple brute force attack or attempts on that particular server. We reached out to the partner, well, their partner now, but the prospect. We said, "What is this server? We can see it's a domain controller. Is there anything else on that?" They said, "That's a critical server right now." Okay, so we started doing investigations. We saw indicators of compromises, of multiple failed login attempts, and they were happening in the hundreds per second. We actually saw that. We actually ended up going ahead and isolating that server because we actually made the executive decision to know if we allow that server to continue being up and running and that bad actor managed to gain access to that server, not only would it be classified as a breach, but the potential harm they can do when they gain access to that environment, deploying ransomware, info stealers, stealing information, changing configurations, for example, that's going to cause a massive disruption for that organization. So we made a decision internally. We said, okay, we need to take this machine offline before that bad actor is successful because they're doing hundreds of authentication attempts per minute, per second. Okay. We saw the firewall that they were going through. We saw the VPN they utilizes. We saw their source IP. So we actually ended up isolating that machine. We ended up creating an incident report for the partner, prospect back then, of course, going ahead and letting them know that, hey, this is the IP that's currently being sourced right now. You need to block that IP with your FortiGates. You need to also close this port with your FortiGates as well. Once that's done, we then recommend you just to rotate credentials once more, okay? And then go ahead and unleash that server back into its normal form. And that is how we was able to protect that particular prospect partner. And due to that particular event, we ended up signing up with us. They saw the value of the SOC team. They saw how quick we are. You know, it was an under 10-minute response that we did, which was a phenomenal result because the research of understanding what firewalls involved, what IP addresses, how many attempts, for example, what server, do we have an EDR agent on that server, for example. So guys, when I talk about the combination of EDR with SIEM, it really does have a massive impact. But I'll tell you something. What happened if we didn't have the SIEM solution? We would have zero visibility of what was going on before that bad actor would have gained access to that server. Because the EDR is not looking for brute force attempts or things like that. It's looking to see if there's any behavior analysis on the machine. Has someone downloaded and executed something malicious on that machine? So when we talk about minutes matter, when we talk about being able to detect things 2 or 3 cycles before the attack, you know, the detonation of that malware, that's where the SIEM really does enhance its visibility to actually understand, is there something which is an indicator of compromise that's occurring before it actually ends up going into the machine, doing its detonation, but also giving extra visibility for the SOC team to be able to know what do we need to do, where do we need to do it, how do we need to do it. And that's the power of the SIEM standalone or combination with, let's say, EDR with the SIEM. So that's probably one of the most successful stories that I have. But there's another one which was mentioned by the SOC team, that a threat was neutralized in under 20 minutes. The SOC team discovered an adversary gained access to a customer network through a malicious workstation. We have a large list of malicious workstations that we have dealt with across our entire community. Okay, so let's just talk about, for example, EDR. We have 4 million EDR agents across the world right now. Can you imagine how much telemetry we are able to utilize to our advantage? So when we talk about things like Windows event logs, etc., when we talk about things like our SIEM solution, if we see a malicious workstation, killed from one end of the world and then reappeared from another end of the world, for example, or perhaps maybe just Kali Linux, that's actually part of our malicious workstation name. It's not part of the critical list, but if someone just spins up Kali, you may not see something at the front end, but guess what? The SOC team can see that. And the SOC team can see that there's a machine that's just been spun up called Kali, and we're now monitoring what is that machine doing? Are they changing any configuration? Are they laterally moving? Are they doing anything else that's suspicious, for example? And as soon as they do, we go ahead and respond. We may do a mass isolation of that particular network because we see that there's a threat actor that's gained access to that particular environment and spun up a new machine. So the fact that we could be able to leverage things like malicious host names, which of course, not every bad actor will do that, but it's another mechanism that increases our visibility and our detections. And bloody hell, we've been very successful with that. Guys, I'll be honest with you, like almost every incident I'm seeing with SIEM, there was some form of malicious workstation that's been detected as well. It is an incredibly powerful detection that we have. So you can see in under 20 minutes from the threat that was detected to neutralize, we kicked the attacker out before they knew what was coming because they just spun up a new machine. It happened to have the same workstation that we already was aware of. And we've gone ahead and isolated that. And then the SOC delivered a clear incident report, which you can see on the right-hand side over here. You can be able to see that we've provided some remediations of what needs to be done, rotating credentials, going ahead and killing this, checking that, for example. But I'll say probably one of the most important things is if you look at the top, there's a request SOC support button. What is that? With EDR, with ITDR, with SIEM, we have the ability to be able to, if it's critical, the admins have the ability to be able to request a SOC support callback if needed. Okay, so you can start an email chain, you can start a live chat, but probably the most meaningful one I've seen is the callback where they would actually ask, one of the admins can ask, I need a SOC analyst to call me because I want to discuss about this. This is quite serious in my eyes, and that's fine. You put down your details, reasons for the call, and somewhere around the world, there'll be a SOC analyst that will reach out to you. And that is the power of the humans behind the technology. As I mentioned, technology can only go so far. What really makes a difference is the people behind the technology. In 2025, we've got great technology out there, but what is important is that the people behind them making that difference. Okay. So let's take a look. But I do see there's a Q&A. How much are you relying on AI to handle the data ingestion? That is a great question. So we don't actually rely too much on AI. We have automations internally that we utilize in order to be able to gather information. But the analysis that's being done, etc., is still human based. Okay. All of that's being done by the humans, for example. The technology to be able to ingest the data up. Okay, that's just standard technology that we utilize. We have SOAR capabilities that could be able to tell us, hey, if there's an incident, then we need to be able to deal with that. We need to be able to execute X, Y, Z in order to be able to gather all that information. So you'll be surprised. We don't actually rely too much on AI, but as we are getting larger, I'll be honest with you, we're starting to incorporate more technology because there's only so many humans we can hire, of course, because of the amount of data sources, the amount of EDR agents that we're deploying. We're starting to incorporate more sophisticated technology to be able to gather that data. But the detections, of course, that's technology, but the analysis will always remain human as of now. But great question. I think there's another question we have. In Microsoft 365 monitoring beta, part of the product is able to automatically respond to possible issues like blocking an account when possible the travel has been detected. That is correct. So Microsoft 365 monitoring beta, that's live GA for a while now. But yes, Mikhail, if you have a user that's logging in from a particular country, maybe you've put that, maybe it's Russia, for example, and you've put that country as a kind of like an unauthorized list, then we'll have an immediate response with that. Okay, so that's the technology taken out. There's no need for a SOC analyst to review that. The technology immediately says that, hey, there's a rule there. We're going to go ahead and isolate it because it's unauthorized. And also, if the ability to be able to, like our SOC team, if we see something like curious, if there's an indicator of compromise, for example. Yeah, there's another question. You guys are doing good. So if there's for example the SOC team that are reviewing someone logging in with a different browser, different location, perhaps a different VPN tunnel as well, our SOC team can also be able to review that as well. That doesn't require an immediate isolation, by the way, just to let you know. It actually does require SOC analysts to review that. So just to answer your question, if someone's logging in from different countries with the same token, for example, it actually requires a SOC analyst to review it just to make sure it's not a false positive. Because if you can imagine, if that was not genuine, for example, or should I say, if it was genuine, there's going to be a lot of false positives that we're going to have to deal with. So that's how we minimize it by the people behind the technology. But yeah, you guys are doing really good. Great questions.
There's
But
another one here,
oh, is
Sasha.
that? Yeah,
Martin's
go on.
asked, will the EDR be connected to the SIEM or will it be like ITDR?
No, the EDR logs will be passed over to the SIEM solution if that's to help answer the question. But in order to utilize the SIEM solution, you would need an EDR agent, just to let you know, which is actually one of the things I'm going to talk about through our demo environment. But Martin, if you've got a further question on that, please put it into the chat, or we could take this offline for sure. But yeah, will the EDR be connected to the SIEM, or will it be like the ITDR? So if we talk about logs, the logs will be also stored in the SIEM solution as of Q3. But in order to utilize the SIEM solution, you will need the EDR agents, and we'll talk about that. So if we go into the actual SIEM solution, I think you guys are all familiar with this console. So this is your command center. Now, if I go into left panel, you'll be able to see SIEM. If I go into source management, SIEM with Huntress is one of the most easiest SIEM solutions you will deploy. So I've worked with 3 different SIEM vendors out there, and it requires all sorts of configurations, 3 or 4 onboarding sessions, depending on your environment. I can get this done with you in half an hour. It's incredibly straightforward. But source management is just a quick and easy way for me to be able to see how many data sources I am indeed ingesting. Okay. Now, don't forget things like your Huntress platform, your ITDR, they're non-billable. Okay, your Microsoft Defender for endpoints, we actually store those logs within the SIEM solution as well. They're non-billable. All right. But what is billable is things like your Windows machines, your network devices, your identity and authentication as well. So endpoint logs, that's going to be your Windows event logs. Okay. Now, how can we ingest that? You need to be able to install your EDR agents. Okay, that's going to be acting as an EDR agent. That's going to be acting as a Windows event log collector, similar to this, and that's going to be acting as a syslog agent, all in one agent. Okay, Martin, I see you got a question. I will get that answered. So all of those will be combined into one application. So you don't need to download 3 or 4 applications to make this work. It will just be one application that is the Huntress EDR agents. So Martin, if that was related to the question, then that would be answered. Now, the Windows event logs, in order to be able to start pulling Windows event logs, all you need to do is so straightforward, is just turn this on. For the entire account, that will be turned on for Windows event logs. So anyone that has an EDR agent on a Windows machine, that will start immediately enabling Windows event log collection. Okay. But for MSPs, maybe they have 10 organizations, but only 4 of them want SIEM, Windows event logs. You can switch that off because the majority don't want Windows logs, and you can add an override to enable it for a specific organization or indeed a host. And what I love about this granular configuration is that if you've got 10 organizations, one of them wants only VPN logs, the other one wants only, for example, servers, and the other one wants everything. You have the ability to be able to be granular with what you want to be able to ingest. So this is a great way to be able to override that. Now, if we go into categories again, you've got syslog, okay? So you will need to install an EDR agent that's on the same network as let's say your firewalls, for example. So in order to be able to enable a syslog collector, it's as simple as going ahead and selecting the organization, selecting the endpoints, and then keeping the listening port either 514, or you can change that. So what does that actually do? That means that the EDR agent that you've deployed on your environment will effectively be listening for syslogs. And all you would need to do on your Sonic Wars, your FortiGates, is just point the logs to that syslog listener, which will be the Huntress agent, and you would just need to grab the internal IP. I recommend to do that on a server that's running 24/7 rather than a laptop that will leave the environments every night or maybe the weekend, because then we're missing crucial logs. So in order to be successful with this is have a machine that's on the environment 24/7 that could be able to look through, that could be able to effectively be up and running to collect those logs all the time. And that allows our SOC team to have visibility all the time. So that's the great combination of best practice with that. Now, once you've done your Windows event logs, your syslogs, for example, you can pick and choose what you want to be able to ingest over here. 9 out of 10 people say, hey, Sasha, you actually ingest everything. That's great. If there's anything outside of that, please let me know. I could put that into feedback. I could tell you, hey, that's coming, for example. But all you would need to do on your, let's say, for example, your Sonic Wall or your Fortinet is just go ahead and point those syslogs, create an object, point the syslogs to that internal IP address of the actual machine. Okay. And that's all you need to do. And then from there, the data will be passed directly to the SIEM solution and subject for investigation where necessary. Now you've got identity and authentication. This is a very powerful component. I'll tell you why. Because one file will count as a data source. One Windows machine will count as a data source. But what about if we're talking about identity and authentication? This is a great question. Do we charge for every user that's utilizing Keeper? No, no, no. We will charge you for the organization. So if you've got 10 organizations, okay, we would charge you 10 data sources. But you also have the ability to fine tune the specific data sources that actually want to be able to utilize the SIEM solution. So maybe you got 10 organizations, 4 of them want to utilize SIEM within Keeper, okay, and 6 of them don't. Within the actual organization of Keeper, you can push the logs directly to the SIEM solution. All right. So if there's 100 people in that organization, it won't be 100 data sources. It will be one data source. And that from a kind of like a billing and a billing mechanism is quite attractive because we're not having to go ahead and ingest, or should I say, port every user as a data source. And we've got things like DNS filter. That is the same concept with the billing mechanism. A generic HTTP event collector. That's a method that we can indeed ingest data. But clouds, as I mentioned, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, AWS. Look, I've been told that Microsoft Azure is coming out Q3, but we do have a beta test. So if we've got a beta test, we're nearly there. I've also told AWS is Q3 as well, and then Google is going to be Q4. These are the current times that I've been told. These are subject to change, but if there's anyone that's interested with Microsoft Azure, please reach out to us or your account manager, and we can be able to get that onboarded for you straight away. Then when we talk about cloud security, you've got Wiz and Cloudflare. If there's anyone that's utilizing Cloudflare, the question I get all the time is, Sasha, what can we ingest with Cloudflare? And that is absolutely everything within Cloudflare. You get to choose as to count me in for you. That's what I like to see. So I see a lot of people asking that question. What can you ingest with Cloudflare? And it's completely up to you. You are the person that is control of what you want to push to the SIEM, and we'll be able to store that for you. Okay. And that is also subject for, of course, things like investigation, etc. And don't forget, Sentinel-1 is over here as well. I just need to switch that on for anyone that is indeed interested. So that is source management. If we go into the actual SIEM dashboard, let's actually show you what it looks like from a dashboard angle. So you get 30 days. This is something that Chris will be going over in a moment, but you get 30 days look back of your searches. So we give you 30 days, we give you 1 year storage, for example. Anything over 30 days, you can request that data back if you wanted to do some investigations, if it's part of an incident, for example. But yes, you get your widgets over here, data stored by month, by day, filtered as well. How much are we filtering out for you? And indeed, top organizations of that are indeed storing. Okay, this month we can see there's a few organizations that are indeed storing quite a bit. You'll be able to see your data pool consumption. If you wanted to be really technical, you can actually check out the raw data of the details. But our team, I'll be honest with you, there's not many occasions you would need to jump onto this to start looking through these logs. That is what Huntress is here for. We're not only storing the logs for you, but we're actually doing the investigations for you as well. Huntress is not a noisy product. I think everyone here has some form of Huntress of our 4 products, for example. So just don't forget that it's not a noisy product. So if you don't see anything, do not worry. You'll be able to see the investigations. There's signals that we are indeed reviewing as well. But I think everyone here for me is familiar that Huntress by default is not a noisy product, okay? Because the Huntress SOC team are reviewing everything for you. And that's, again, the people behind the technology. Now, if we go into, well, there's a couple of things actually. There's starter queries over here. Okay, so these are queries which are already predefined and built out for you. Things like Windows event logs. You can see SonicWall, FortiGates. You could be able to see Sophos. Now, don't forget, we're still building this out. So if you don't see pfSense, for example, here, don't be alarmed. It is something that we're still trying to build out regarding predefined queries. But the things which really do help us is things like Azure Active Directory, and also Windows event logs. So things like brute force attacks, for example. Those are the sorts of queries we will utilize internally in order to find out what's going on with that. But we have released a new function, which is called query management. So if you said, I want to be able to see every so often, every 24 hours, I want to be able to see the password resets. You can be able to create a query, and you can be able to schedule that every so often. So someone here has put ITDR failed login attempts. They want to see the failed login attempts. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. So you can schedule that directly from the SIEM solution, and that would be sent out to you as well. You got failed login attempts and failed account creation. So there's a lot of stuff that we can be able to do. So that was something that was I'm actually quite surprised because it was something that was scheduled out later. We actually got that out early. So that's quite nice to see for the query management. Don't forget, I'm not too sure if anyone has had an account review recently. We actually go through the roadmap as well. So if there's anyone interested to be able to see what's happening in Q4 later, we could definitely go through that as well. And I think like Mac OS and Linux logs as well, that's something that's been asked for, and that is from a later date. So around Q4 time, we started to look into ingesting that. Now, let's talk about these final two, rehydrated data. So, as I mentioned, we give you 1 year hot storage searchable look back within the actual console. If you have 7-year storage, you get 3 months. Okay, but most 99% of the people I work with are happy for the 1 year data storage. They say that's enough from a compliance aspect. But what happens if there's something 8 months old, which is no longer searchable within a SIEM solution? You can rehydrate the data. You can send a request that would be, picking out your time, your end time, your target. So if you want it for an account, a specific organization, or even a specific source, I mean, you can select that source and you'll be able to pull the logs directly from that as well. This wasn't something available a couple of months ago. We used to actually ask people to reach out to the SOC team or the support team to do that, but now this is a self-service that you can be able to do at any time. And the reason why people were saying that this needs to be quicker is because normally it's part of an incident that they are requesting this data. So they need it now, okay? So there's no quicker way than you being able to do it on the portal yourself, rather than sending an email, waiting for the request, etc. And then smart filtered data. So as I mentioned, we do filter out the data. Okay, anything that is not relevant, not security relevant, we're going to filter it out. But we actually give you the ability to be able to look at that data within the smart filtered section as well, because you warrant it. You're entitled to see what we filtered out. So there may be something that you say down the line, hey, Sasha, like you filtered out this, but actually for this organization is actually really important because of X, Y, Z. Come and have a chat with us and we can discuss that internally. But yeah, it's really nice to be able to see the data that we have indeed filtered out. So you can see what Huntress is indeed storing, also compared to filtering out as well. Now, don't forget, if you have ITDR, we actually store the logs within the SIEM solution for you for 1 year. But if we go into, let's say, reports, okay, this is your executive summary report. It's kind of like a high-level report of all your technologies. If we scroll all the way down, if you have ITDR or the SIEM enabled, you will then be able to see the SIEM section filled out for you over here of the logs ingested, the signals detected, investigated, as well as reported as well for you. Okay, I think this is game changing because it really does open up the visibility. When I see an EDR threat that's been done by the SOC team, they look at the SIEM logs as well because the data's there. There may be something within the SIEM solution that really does make the difference of identifying something and changing it to potentially something else because of those SIEM logs. So it's really wonderful to have all those logs available. So, and I actually think, at least from, I don't normally tend to talk about pricing, but at least compared to other SIEM solutions out there, this is incredibly affordable, I would say. So I'm going to go back into the slide deck, and what I'm going to do is pass it to the wonderful Chris.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Sasha. I don't know about the audience, but I know People say you can't make SIEM exciting, but you definitely can. So yes, thank you for taking us through that. What we're going to look back now is we sort of for the last part of the webinar is actually take a look at some of the strategies that we've used or what we've seen our partners use over the last 9 or 10 months of selling SIEM. And the first part of that is to look at some of the objections and challenges that we've sort of seen our partners encounter really. We're well aware that you guys have joined the webinar today, so you absolutely must believe there to be a need for SIEM for your clients. That hasn't always been the case for the SMBs within the channel community. There's been the perception that clients do not require a SIEM, or they're already compliant, and that a SIEM isn't required as part of that. That may have been the case 6 months ago, 9 months ago, but what we've seen is partners get requests for SIEMs via security questionnaires and such, and actually frameworks start to dictate that a SIEM will require, or sorry, will help from a compliance standpoint, enabling that log centralization, and that a SIEM would be recommended as part of that. So we're seeing that common objection kind of watered down now, where a SIEM is becoming commonplace. Also, Sasha just touched on it then, being SIEMs too expensive. That's obviously come from the history of working with traditional SIEMs and seeing how complex they are and expensive they can be. Smart filtering at Huntress has enabled us to reduce the costs for a SIEM solution and pass those savings on to partners like yourselves. And Sash has also taken us through the data sources there. We've added a wealth of new ones over the last 6 months or so, and we're continuing to do that. So if you see something or you didn't see a data source that you commonly use, by all means let us know, but we're keen to hear from you. And as we move on to see what actually is working for our partners who are selling SIEM, the first thing really is they're evaluating what their clients' business objectives is and what the cost of inaction would be when it comes to a breach and the reputational damage that can cause. You've seen there that minutes really do matter, and a SIEM solution can help reduce the time to detection immensely. We've already covered the legal obligations, the specific requirements for certain verticals, particularly on the cyber insurance as well, cyber warranties. We're seeing the SIEM being recommended. Obviously, we know in the event of a breach, the first thing that is asked for the logs. For a product like Huntress SIEM, what that means is you can now provide those logs, and that actually means there's no limited issues or concerns when it comes to a client being reimbursed by these companies should they suffer a breach. We're also seeing partners bundle SIEM into existing or new bundles as clients require them or that they come up for renewal. Um, that's actually standardizing SIEM rather than it being seen as sort of a top tier service. It should be made available to absolutely everybody, and you can do that by reducing your costs, particularly from a Huntress perspective. The more you use, the lower the cost can be, as well as increasing your commits for EDR and ITDR possibly. And we know you being able to provide enhanced bundles means your customers are getting, or clients, I should say, are actually getting value from you guys as the trusted advisor. We want you guys, we know you as Huntress partners, you guys absolutely care about security, and we know you care about your clients' security as well. For you guys to be able to convey that by bringing a new product to them absolutely speaks volumes, because we know your competition would not necessarily be talking about a SIEM solution. So we're hoping to guide you through that thought leadership piece there as well. Absolutely highlight the benefits of the EDR and SIEM solution combined versus a standalone EDR. It provides superior threat detection and response capabilities that Sasha has gone through there. We've even seen partners to get their foot in the door when it comes to a SIEM solution, protect the firewalls for their clients, just as a starting point to build then wider the conversation later on. Obviously, the EDR does not cover firewalls, so that's an easier conversation to have with clients if they have EDR already, which you know the majority of clients on the partners on this call absolutely do. And as we move forwards, we can look at actually what's included with the SIEM license. This slide here is really just to bust some of the myths that have come around from not using a Huntress SIEM before, or using a different solution. First of all, I'd like to say there's no ingestion fees at all. The one license fee that you have is the standard cost. It includes 10 gigs of data per month per license. That's actually pulled across your total deployment. So, for example, if you have 100 data sources, that would be 1 terabytes worth of data per month. And over the 12 months, that's 12 terabytes worth of data. And in the year that we've been running SIEM, we've not seen any partner exceed this due to the smart filtering and the capabilities that we have around that. So 10 gigs of data actually means we can provide you guys with simple and predictable billing. We don't want you to be messing around with gigs and fluctuating costs each month. So we've kept it simple and predictable. Also, with that, the Huntress SOC is included as standard, monitoring and managing the SIEM solution on a 24/7 basis. Sasha has also touched on it as well. We do have 12 months retention of the logs as standard, with that 30 days of hot storage. We do have 7 years as an option. That is an additional cost. That's the only other additional cost. So if you have specific clients that do require it, particularly financial, legal, and other verticals as that's similar to those, then 7 years is absolutely an option that we can provide. And I would highlight it is 1 year or 7 years. We can't do 4 years or 5 years and retention there. So speak to your account manager if you do require 7 years for specific clients. And obviously, this is Huntress. So everything that we see is provided. Sales and technical training, access to the hub. We know this is a new service for the majority of our partners, so we want to help your teams be able to position it to their clients and also have that technical capabilities as well. So we're here to help upskill your team. And if we move on, we can take a look at how you can leverage your Huntress team to be able to do that. Obviously, the demo and webinar that Sasha's run through today, we can absolutely do that to your clients as well as part of a marketing campaign. So please speak to your account management team and how that would look like. We can also provide tailored campaigns to you to help you onboard new clients from a SIEM perspective and help increase your footprint there. Do have a couple of calls to action. The first would be to set up a trial via the Huntress portal if you've not had the opportunity to look at a SIEM before. This gives you access to the complete solution, which you're welcome to deploy far and wide. We'd encourage you to deploy it to as many use as many data sources as possible. We know partners test for themselves as well as their clients, and that's really where you see the true value of it, because you can generate reports that Sasha has done there and use that as a selling tool as well. That also gives you the ability to use the NFR. It's quite a strong story to be able to tell your clients that you're using SIEM internally as well. So for you guys to use the NFR, protect yourselves, because if you don't have a SIEM solution, then yourselves, then this would certainly help strengthen your own security posture and be able to convey that in the messaging to your clients as well. And if we move on to the last slide there, you'll be able to actually see a QR code. Sasha, correct me. This QR code is absolutely fine. You've reassured me.
Yeah, I reassured Chris earlier. Generated this myself. Do not worry. You can scan this. I'm not going to download anything nasty on your mobile phone, so you'll be fine. This is completely safe.
Yes, so this is one way of being able to start the trial through the QR code. Or if you do have, like the majority of you, access to the Huntress dashboard, you can absolutely go in through the dashboard as well and start a trial, or speak to your account manager. Something I should have mentioned, just to reiterate what we said at the start, we do have the resources page at the bottom there for the SIEM data sheet and the SIEM buyer's guide. We do have some other collateral as well. So by all means, speak to your team in terms of what you're looking for and how we can utilize that. I haven't mentioned it, but we do have the Huntress Hub as well. If you've not registered onto the Huntress Hub, it is a separate sales and marketing platform that will provide you with the content you need to take this messaging to your clients there. I just see a question from Ralph. Hi, Ralph. Great. Glad you've joined us today. Can you tell us something about the price? I won't go into specifics because obviously we've got different countries on. So we've got GBP and euros across the EMEA region, but we do price per data source per month. and it's a minimum commitment of 50 data sources. However, we are seeing partners start at 30 odd data sources, even less, just to be able to get themselves up and running. But we do have strategies in place to be able to get you onboarded quickly. So speak to your account manager about your individual requirements. But you'll see the pricing, if you've not seen it before, is very similar to your EDR and ITDR in terms of the way we structure it on a 12-month contract with minimum commitments that you can move through as you wish. So we do try and keep it as simple and predictable as we can, including that data element that I mentioned earlier. With that, do we have any other queries or questions? Or Sasha, is there anything else there you would like to add?
No, I'm literally just knocking off the actual questions. Like I'm the ones I answered on live. I'm just making sure that I just put some more details down and sending that out. So you will all receive a private message.
Great stuff. We did have one question coming earlier. Can we do 10 years data retention?
Oh, that's it. That's an interesting one. So no, we can only do 1 year or 7 years. We can't do in between like 5 or 6. Um, so if there's anyone that is requesting 10 years, please let me know because I'll be really interested to know what sort of regulation you're trying to comply with in order to get 10. The maximum I know with things like medical, PCI, etc., legal is up to 7. So if there's a special case for you, please let us know. But as of now, we can only do 1 or 7 years. But I'll be keen to know what compliance you're trying to maintain for that.
Great stuff. And I think if we move on to the next slide, so we can leave that up. The next slide, we're bringing the webinar to a close, but that's the QR code there for anyone that needs it. And I believe Cody's put some links on there into the chat for anyone that needs to understand who your account manager is, how to start a trial, and where you can log into the Huntress Hub as well. This page is also being uploaded to the website as well. Sorry, the webinar's been uploaded to the website as well for anyone that hasn't been, any of your colleagues that haven't been able to make it today. But yes, if anyone has any questions or they want to see more, by all means reach out to us after the webinar and we'll happily engage with you. But delighted that you've taken the time out to join us. I hope you found it incredibly useful. And as I said, Sasha's made SIEM exciting. So Sasha, I'd like to thank you again for your time as well. Sasha, is there anything from yourself?
No, please follow us on LinkedIn if you want to have a chat with us. I think both Chris and I are incredibly transparent people. We generally don't mind if you reach out to us. I get people reach out to me all the time just asking questions, and I'm more than happy to get those answered. But if you've got any questions, please reach out to your account executive, your SC, your CAM as well. Ralph, I'm just replying back to you now. If you reach out to your account manager, they could definitely give you pricing or your account executive.
That's
And
actually me, so I'll speak to Ralph
Oh, is that
after.
you? Okay,
Yeah.
that's handy. All right, that's handy. So there you go. But besides that, I hope you found this interesting. I think SIEM is probably one of the hardest technologies that we have for a lot of people to understand because it's a lot of people not familiar with SIEM because again it was built for the top 1%, it was built for the enterprise. So what we've done is we've brought that down to the SME, the MSP market, and so far we've been incredibly successful with it as well. And if you for the MSPs out there, if you need help with demonstrations, you can reach out to us. We'll be happy to get involved. If you need onboarding, if you need education, whatever you need. I mean, I've never worked for a company that's so transparent, and Huntress is a very transparent company. So if you need any help, please let us know. We're more than happy to help get involved.
Yeah, and one last thank you for me. Thank you to you guys for taking the interest in the SIEM solution. We know it's there to sort of improve the security offerings that you guys provide. So yes, anything we can do to help, by all means, let us know. Otherwise,
And
we'll
Rory, just a shout out for you. He's we've got one from Rory saying, to be fair, you've made it incredibly easy to implement. And yeah, he's right. The product team have absolutely smashed it. They've incorporated it with one agent that you need to install. You don't need to port mirror anything. You don't need to download a log shipper or anything third party. Thanks, Mikhail. But yeah, I think you're right. I think we have made this so easy that anyone can be able to implement it. So yeah, really, really happy that you guys feel the same.
we do the work, so you guys don't have to do that side of things. And we're here to wreck hackers. So let's go.
Yeah, we got 4 more minutes on this, so we'll keep this open for 4 minutes in case anyone wants to have a cheeky chat with us. But besides that, I hope that you found this informative, and I would like to thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you all. We'll stay around for any questions.
I'll keep that QR page open just in case anyone wants to be able to scan it. Hit us up on LinkedIn. We're happy to be able to talk to you. But yeah, if this is of interest, start a trial. My opinion is put us to the test, as you can be able to see on that page. We really have a confident feeling with our SIEM and a confident feeling with our SOC team. We've got statistics to be able to back that up. So anyone that wants to put us to the test, please bring in your customers, bring in yourselves. Be able to utilize a trial. If you've got NFRs, for example, whatever you're utilizing, take advantage of that and let's have some fun. That's all I'm going to say.
Don't think we have any more questions coming through at the moment. Yeah. Sheree, I think we can wrap it there, Sasha.
Yeah, I think we're good.
If anyone has any questions post the session, by all means let us know and we'll do our best to come back to you. But oh, Stick,
Oh,
it's just coming with one there at the end.
Steen, you definitely caught us. Okay, is one data source included in EDR and ITDR licenses, or will they be billed separately? So your Windows machines, okay, so your Windows machines will be a data source. Okay, so for every Windows machine that you want to be able to pull for Windows event logs, they will be classified as a data source. Your ITDR organization will be one data source. Okay, so if you've got an MSP and you've got 10 organizations and they've got 10 ITDR, that would be 10 data sources. But don't forget, ITDR is non-billable, so there's nothing to worry about there. But don't forget EDR, as I said, the EDR process data, etc. That is destined to be Q3 for the release. So when we talk about EDR, we're talking about the Windows event logs on the Windows machine. So hopefully that helps. So Windows machines will be one data source. ITDR organization will be another data source, but don't forget ITDR is non-billable at the moment.
Great stuff. Well, we're approaching the top of the hour now, so it's been great to have you all with us, but I think we'll let you crack on with your day. Hope you have a great afternoon and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, team.